I think with that, patients are really happy. That's why they come to you ultimately. They recognise they want to make a change. They want to learn more about it, but they just don't really know where to start. Seeing people do on Strava or would like to do.
Tend to ego, can't it?
Exactly.
Like you see someone else, like, I can do that.
It's because they've managed to do those simple things consistently well every day.
Hello and welcome to the Aesthetic Edge, where we talk about all things aesthetics. Now, we have Dr. George Collins joining us today, and we're going to be discussing lifestyle medicine. Dr. George is juggling both NHS medicine, so hospital medicine, as well as lifestyle medicine. And he's going to talk to us about how he manages to do that. Dr. George, thank you for joining us today.
Hi, hello.
How are you doing?
Yeah, great. Yeah, really happy to be here.
Excellent. So, George, tell me a little bit about your background and who you are.
Yeah, so as you mentioned, my background is largely in hospital medicine. I've worked in all sorts of acute areas, from intensive care, largely a lot of work in A&E, and I'm now progressing into my training in general practice with an interest in sports medicine.
Okay, tell me what sparked this interest in sports medicine.
So I think sports medicine. It's been a long interest of mine, but it's also sort of become more and more important to me. I think as I've got older, sort of from as an amateur recreational athlete, and then starting to think about looking after myself as I get older, and I think trying to sort of focus and juggle your own training needs and things around work has become more and more important for me. I think when we're younger, we often take that very for granted.
Certainly do.
And actually diving a bit deeper into that, into the nutrition and into sort of the science behind injuries and recovering from injuries and stuff has become a passion for me that has become more my job.
Okay, and how much of lifestyle medicine are you doing now compared to NHS?
Yeah, so it's something that I'm doing alongside my NHS work. I have fortunately been able to reduce some of my NHS work to a part-time basis so that I can juggle it alongside that, with the goal that I'm going to then just continue sort of progressing.
And what are some of the advantages that you've experienced trying to focus a little bit more on lifestyle medicine as opposed to traditional NHS work?
Yeah, so I found it really interesting because a lot of the things that I've encountered for so long in our hospital careers, as a lot of us in the NHS do, is that so many of the diseases and the conditions that we treat are have sort of foundations in lifestyle medicine.
Yep.
Like everything that we focus on treating, the things like cardiovascular disease and diabetes and respiratory conditions, so much of it can be boiled down back to lifestyle medicine. And I think once you start thinking about adopting some of those things that we can all change and improve, we can then start thinking about optimizing and preventing some of that long-term.
I couldn't agree more with you. I think in especially in GP medicine, in all types of traditional NHS medicine, it's mostly a patient comes in with a disease, and then you're treating them with a drug or you're treating them with surgery. Exactly. Whereas lifestyle medicine is a lot more preventative, and we've always said prevention is better than cure. So being able to change their lifestyle habits from the start and preventing them is surely not only going to make the patient feel better, but also is unburdening the NHS, which we both know is very burdened.
Yeah, I completely agree, and it's a change in the way that traditional medicine is practiced, and the NHS is phenomenal at treating disease once it's there, but it's changing that way to trying to, like you say, prevention is better than cure, and for a long time we've known about prevention, primary, secondary prevention as much as we can, but it's actually about trying to get in there earlier and make simple changes over a long period of time that will help people, longer term.
I think this is going to be something that a lot of doctors resonate with. Can you talk us through how one can become involved with lifestyle medicine?
Yeah, so I think it is challenging because it's something that we're all aware of. It's something that unfortunately, because the way medicine is taught a lot in medical schools, like you said, it's focused a lot on disease. And treating of disease, it's actually very difficult to slightly learn more about it, or even if you're learning more about it, actually have the time to be able to give that to patients. We're often so very limited in the amount of time that we have that you are actually sort of treating things rather than being able to educate as much. So I would say if you're trying to broaden your knowledge in lifestyle medicine, focusing on those sort of areas that more about, or certain things in your own health practices that you do, and learning about some of those things in a bit more depth, whether that's your diet, whether that's your exercise, whether that's your sleep. If you can sort of think about it and make it relatable to you and find out what sort of things work for you. And there's lots of good resources out there. There's increasingly great lifestyle medicine resources out there that you can learn a couple of things a bit more about and focus on a small area to start off with.
In terms of specific resources, anything that you would use?
There's a fantastic resource that I found very useful that's been set up by a couple of doctors called NutriTank, which is a wonderful resource that's covering, largely it's focused on nutrition, but is focused on lots of lifestyle conditions. It covers a lot about sort of like a lot of the new about the weight loss medications and things like that. And it sort of debunks a lot of things with various diets and holds regular webinars for
That's really useful
professionals.
because everything's always changing as well, so you need to keep up to date. One resource that I found was very helpful was actually a company called Apex Medical. Turns out to be a sister company of Derma Medical, and that's where I did my first course. To speak a bit about my own journey, I also decided I want to delve into lifestyle medicine because a lot of my patients not only want to look good, but they also want to feel good. So I wanted to try and help them do that. And I think that's nicely tiered into Apex, and they structured it in a really nice way.
Yes.
So it would be sort of lifestyle medicine involving nutrition, sleep, exercise, all of that sort of thing. Then the next level after that will be hormone imbalances, because of course if our hormones are not in line, then we're not going to feel as good.
Definitely.
Weight loss therapeutics, and even really interesting biohacking stuff, so like NAD+. And I think that gave me a really nice structure because, like you said, there's not a lot of resources out there to really structure everything. It's usually very, very secular, and you're going to find one thing that works, research that, but then how do you know what you don't know? And I think that's why Apex worked quite well for me.
Yeah, I completely agree. I went on the same Apex course back in. I went on the back then. It was just sort of the fundamentals course with Apex back in October, and it was fantastic so building on some of that lifestyle medicine that I'd learned about myself into actually translating that to like longevity medicine, where we're focusing on extending patients' health span and not just their lifespan.
Exactly. Yeah.
So I sort of then moved more from lifestyle into longevity, which I think they're so ever so closely linked. But longevity medicine goes slightly that bit further, like you said, about rather than just sort of entirely focusing on those fundamental changes, it's also looking at how we can adapt that and bring in latest in technology and wearables, and include that data element to inform us more about those foundational pillars.
Yeah, and I found that when I learned more about it, I wanted to make more changes for my own life as well. I realized I wasn't particularly overweight, I wasn't particularly unhealthy, but it's always nice, you can always improve. And like a couple of things that I did was, I was a vegetarian before, and now I eat meat because I learned the importance of complete proteins. I switched up my exercise regime to focus less on steady state cardio, less jogging, more into HIIT workouts and weightlifting, which I believe is something that you've incorporated into your own
and again,
routine.
I think this is why I say it's really important to think about what works for you and finding those different bits and pieces, because then you can learn more about the area that's relevant to you. But I mean, for me, trying to sort of incorporate strength training regularly is something that I've always done, but it's trying to now work about how I can do that as you're getting slightly older or accommodating for previous injuries, and moving away from the idea of there are certain things that you have to do. There are certain exercises that you have to do, or you have to do them over a certain period
Everyone
of time.
has to deadlift, everyone has to squat,
exactly.
Of course.
And there are certain, there are many ways to skin a cat, and there are loads of different ways to do different sort of strength training exercises that will give you all the benefits. And I think there's something that I really try and reiterate to patients as well. There are so many more benefits to strength training than it's not just for bodybuilders, it's not just for putting on muscle. It's phenomenal at helping us regulate our hormones and bone density, all of which things that are really important as we get older. And I think trying to sort of debunk a lot of those beliefs that we can get from different areas that actually these things are good as you get older, and it's not necessarily about being a bodybuilder or, like you say, lifting the heaviest of weights or going in there for hours at a time.
But we've kind of flipped our way of thinking as well, because growing up, certainly, and certainly in med school, everyone always told us about the importance of cardiovascular health.
Yeah.
And we'd always tell the bodybuilders that if you can't do cardio, then you're not fit. But actually, the evidence is coming out recently that strength training can be even more important. When you think about statistics like the mortality rate of people who have hip fractures and their mobility goes down, it's usually because they don't have any strength in their legs and they have reduced bone density. And then I think it's like a 20, you correct me if I'm wrong, like 20% chance of dying a year after.
Massive mortality risk post hip fracture. Largely because it is itself prognosticated with the fact that you have undergone a certain amount of deconditioning, or your balance isn't what it should be, or you're at risk of falls, and therefore it can be a reflection of actually your sort of functional state as well. So I agree. I think just trying to sort of hone in and focus on those elements that it's really, really good for. Like you said, so cardiovascular training, phenomenal. But we need to think about like the whole picture as well. So you can't just sort of just say that sole cardiovascular training is going to be everything that you need. Regular exposure to resistance training is extremely important. And also one of the things that we don't really get told too much about is the benefits of resistance training actually on your cardiovascular health as well. Like your heart rate rises significantly during strength training. And it's trying to sort of move away from those ideas of running on a treadmill is great for your heart, and then lifting weights is just for building muscle. And actually, there's a lot of overlap.
There is.
Yeah.
So in terms of building your business as a lifestyle practitioner, obviously it's not something that many people hire for. How have you done it in your own practice?
So as that's in the longevity medicine area. Yeah. So in longevity medicine, I run a clinic where. So I will consult with patients. We sort of work through a lot of those regular lifestyle factors where we go through sort of an assessment of where they're at. Also sort of their beliefs of coming into things, what previous things have they tried, what sort of things have worked for them, what are their goals. So
because not everyone has the same goals.
So it's like everyone's got different goals, and lots of people can come into longevity medicine with either sort of very long-term views, or they can be like, look, at the moment I'm someone that's young and I'm fit, but I don't really quite know what to do next to optimize my health, and it sort of incorporates that performance element of things. Or you've got people that are saying, look, I really want to lose some weight. That come to you and have found that they've got initial signs of type 2 diabetes, or that they're gaining too much weight, or and actually it's a bit of a wake-up call that they need to do a little bit of digging deeper. So I think trying to assess where people are at, what they've done before, what sort of things have worked for them, and where they want to get to are fundamental. So largely it's focused on that. And then we sort of explore ways to get them there. And that's done through like initial baseline testing, which I like to do with where we get, so depending on their goals and their outcomes, we'll do sort of full sets of blood testing. And then I can feed back to those different areas that I think are related to them about that. And then we can do other baseline testing sort of on their diet, where I'll ask patients to wear a continuous glucose monitor for a certain bit of time, if diet might be their focus, and we can sort of talk about modifications there. And then, so really it focuses so much on those fundamental principles that then you build from there. And I think often people can come in sort of with the idea that longevity medicine is about wearing, the latest wearables, or like you say, biohacking straight from the start, and
or the latest
supplement, or the latest supplement, and really these things, it's a pyramid, and those things will help, but it's percentage benefit, and ultimately if you're, there's the old adage that you can't out-train a bad diet. And that's sort of true with longevity medicine. You can't. There will be no supplement that you can take or no wearable that you'll do. But if you're not hitting those foundational things,
it supplements what you're supposed to be doing, which is good diet, good exercise.
So a lot of that sort of educating, and discussing where people are at, and I think that's where the data can help, because it can sort of reinforce or help re-educate largely. Because a lot of people, when they come to see you, will think, I've got a good diet, or I exercise regularly, so I'm not quite sure. But then it's like trying to really break that down and say, well, okay, you're exercising regularly, but what does that involve? Or like you say, is that just cardiovascular, or are you incorporating strength training as well? And I think once you go through that, patients can be really receptive to sort of ultimately learning more, because it's about empowering them to make the changes. Lifestyle medicine is not something that we can, it's not a medication that we can prescribe and give and it's sorted. It's about re-educating and allowing people.
It's mostly re-education.
Exactly, yeah. And I think with that, patients are really happy. That's why they come to you ultimately. They recognise they want to make a change. They want to learn more about it, but they just don't really know where to start. And there's so much out there that can be conflicting. We hear about it all the time. This is the new diet, that's the new exercise, this new fad, there's that. So I think and that's why one of the things that I try and instill most of all really is that actually no single one of these fads or diets or exercises are going to work, but it's about having consistency in what you do. And those that we see that are 80, 90 and are still going about their daily life, it's because they've and doing the things that they love, it's because they've managed to do those simple things consistently well every day.
Yeah, absolutely. When we look at blue zones, we were talking about the fact that you're living in a blue zone at the moment, living in a hilly area, walking up hills every single day. It's the little things like that that actually make a huge difference.
The patients don't really realise they're doing. So I had a 90-year-old lady in my clinic the other day in my NHS that she was saying that she was suffering with a bit of back and neck pain at the moment, but she thinks that was actually just because it was her 90th birthday party that she was hosting at the weekend, and she'd been baking a cake and she'd been on her feet for 3 hours.
It's incredible.
So it was probably a bit of that. But by the way, she'd walked to the clinic today, and she's got her art class on Tuesday, and it's all of these things that people just do as sort of part of their lifestyle that we don't really acknowledge, that allows them to just keep going.
Yeah, absolutely. I want to bring you back slightly because you mentioned some interesting things I think our listeners would like to learn more about. So this whole thing of being able to do bloods for your patients.
Yes.
Now, obviously, that's very easy to do if you're in an A&E or a GP setting.
Sure.
Being a solo practitioner, how do you go about doing these sort of testings for your patients?
Yeah, so third-party testing largely. So I split between either asking patients to go. So third-party companies, there are many out there. One of them can be like Randox, where you ask patients to go to a testing centre. The benefits of that for me really are so that patients can quite like going to those centres. They can have their bloods taken. They're in and out. There are plenty of sites available that are local to them. But also they can provide me with really interesting information. So like I will get BMI, height,
blood pressure, observations, heart rate, everything.
Full observation, which is so important rather than just having blood tests in isolation. I need to know all of those observations. And it can also just be a sign to dig a little bit deeper as well. Like if you get high blood pressure, I might ask them to go back, or I might suggest that they buy a blood pressure monitor themselves and monitor a little bit more. Or I might recommend a scales and things like that where they can track their journey. So
it's so useful to see the difference that they have
amazing.
In terms of having numbers in front of you rather than just like, oh, okay, I feel better. That's so qualitative. I want quantitative measures.
Exactly.
Your weight was this, now this is your weight.
Yeah.
Obviously, weight's not the best thing. BMI is not the best thing, which is why one thing that Randox offers, which I think is absolutely phenomenal, is DEXA scanning. Because you can see someone's body composition. That is a true measure to see what the longevity advice that you're giving, is it actually making a difference for them? Is DEXA scanning something that you use in your clinic?
Yeah, definitely. And I think depending on sort of the level that the patients are willing to come into, that it can be very useful, and certainly using it at different intervals after you've been working with people for a while. It's something that's used in elite sport all of the time, and I think largely sort of from my back, what I'm trying to do is trying to think about bringing some of those things that are previously inaccessible to the general public. And I think as things are getting much more affordable and as technology is trickling down, we're able to provide a lot more of that to our patients.
The general public,
Yeah, DEXA scanning is a fantastic tool. Because like you say, one of those things that you can then debunk a bit for patients is it's not just about your weight. People will say, oh, my weight is static, and talking about that body composition change and how that's important and what that means for them. And DEXA scanning is fantastic for that. But yeah, there are all sort of tools where you could say, I might send you for an initial DEXA scan, but then actually I'd recommend smart scales that you can have at home. To just sort of track it yourself in the meantime.
Yeah, absolutely.
It may not be the most accurate, but it's accurate relative to itself. So you've got an idea of how you're getting on.
I mean, even a CGM, like there are some websites you can go to where you can get a free CGM.
Yeah.
For those of you who are interested, you can go on Dexcom, Dexcom. They actually offer free continuous glucose monitors.
Yeah.
I found it such an effective tool to see what spikes my sugars and what doesn't, and things that you wouldn't necessarily expect. I know grape is almost entirely sugar, but even one grape would shoot my blood sugar up.
Yeah.
And the changes I've made as a result of that have actually had a massive impact on my own health.
Yeah.
And being able to let our patients see that as well is one thing. A doctor telling you this is bad for you, it's another thing to see data right in front of you of your sugars going up when you eat something in particular.
Yeah, it's really useful, and I think that's where it comes into that re-education, doesn't it? And it's about it's not saying that because this data says it, it's actually about using it to reflect your own practice and going, well, this is what I previously thought, and then, oh, but that's how that affects me, and then it's that positive reinforcement that what you're doing is beneficial.
One thing I think would be very useful for our listeners is to find out a little bit more of how you market to these particular individuals, especially in the sports medicine sector as well. So how do you go about doing that?
Well, so social media largely as well, but all the simple things. So having a website that's functional, accessible, but trying to target yourself to those, because longevity medicine can encapsulate so many things, but trying to target yourself to those, like you say, in a younger sort of sports performance area. So you can. So I've held talks at my local gym and things like that, and you can get sort of
really
younger
good
populations involved.
Yeah.
And then largely word of mouth. You find that people that are working out and that are willing to spend a large portion of their income to maintaining their self anyway to the gym. Like gym memberships now can be extremely expensive in London. If people are looking to spend that much themselves, a small amount extra to think, right, what's actually going on? Is all the time that I'm spending in the gym each month actually helping? Or so like it's about getting that sort of time and investment back, isn't it?
Okay,
as well?
perfect. So word of mouth, social media, and going and giving local talks at local places where they focus.
Yeah,
it's a great way to do it.
Yeah.
I hope that's useful for you guys. Guys, don't forget to like, share, and subscribe if this information is useful to you. Let's get it out there so that we can help more people. So I want to bring things back to a little bit more about you now. Now, I know that you've had an injury recently in terms of running. Talk me through how your fitness plan, your recovery, your injury time, how did you work your way through that?
Yeah, so again, it's one of those things, isn't it? That you can have, you can have all the knowledge about something, and then it's actually about trying to incorporate it in a way that it works for you. And while I know what I need to do to recover and to work down that normal sort of injury recovery pathway, life gets in the way, doesn't it? And it's about trying to integrate that in terms of your work, find the ways that it will work for you. So it's about trying to progress that increasing load as you recover from an injury, but you have to recognise that life and return to injury isn't linear. You know, there's going to be things that come up in life that mean that you take a little bit of a dip, and your response to training is your response to lifestyle, and we can't avoid a lot of the stresses that we have in our lives and work, and that's necessary. So it's about understanding how to taper those and not be too brutal on yourself when that sort of stuff happens.
Absolutely. Do you have any top tips to reduce your chance of injury in the first place?
So load, really, managing your load, and trying to understand that your cardiovascular and your strength is going to progress quicker than a lot of your soft tissues can handle. And so cardiovascularly, we often find that we're very ready to progress with things. But your soft tissues, your joints, your tendon, they're going to take a little bit of time. And so trying to manage that increasing load and progress gradually are extremely important. We see problems when we take big jumps in our training load, undertake distances that we're sort of seeing people do on Strava or would like to do.
Tend to ego con it.
Exactly.
Like you see someone else, and I think I can do that.
Exactly.
Ego lifting.
And you can, but you're going to injure yourself. Or like
it's
ego
not worth
lifting,
it.
you walk into the gym and you see that, and you know, your mind's saying you can, your heart's saying you can, your muscles do, but your soft tissues are going to take time to do that.
Interesting way of thinking about it. Yeah.
And it's very difficult, but to try and take that ego out of it and just compare yourself to where you were last week with it, rather than the person next to you or the personal
Interesting.
driver.
Lovely. So I think I've taken up enough of your time, but if I can just finish off on one thing, if you can give us your 3, maybe 5 tips, if you have them, in terms of promoting longevity and health. What the most important 5 things that you can think of? It's a lot of stress on you, I know.
Promoting longevity and health. So promoting it in terms of for patients,
as in, for a patient who's trying to improve their. So the listener at home is listening to our conversation. 5 things that they can do today to try and improve their longevity, to try and live healthier and live longer lives.
Sure. Okay. So I think all of this would come down to trying to take a sort of a deep dive in where you are at the moment. I think is foundational. So looking at all of those different areas that we've mentioned in terms of nutrition, sleep, exercise. I think that'd be so trying to assess where you're at the moment as a baseline would be really important.
Yeah.
And then I guess number 2 would be trying to think about sort of focus on each one of those areas really. I think so trying to find if we're thinking about nutrition, trying to find something that would work for you in terms of researching some of the things that are out there in terms of intermittent fasting, or whether you're thinking about whether you want to be more of a meat-based diet or a plant-based diet, but ultimately looking to try and optimize your protein intake so that you're then able to exercise and sustain your muscle mass and reduce your low visceral body fat. That would probably be.
Optimize protein,
So optimizing protein. Number 3 would then be look at exploring your different types of exercise you're doing. Okay, so trying to mix up your regular cardiovascular or your regular strength training with something that's more flicking in between the two, something that's asking more of your, like you mentioned, your own HIIT training. That's simultaneously working your cardiovascular and your strength. So trying to maybe explore a new form of exercise or mix something up.
It's so easy to do the same thing over and over and over again. I find I do that all the time in the gym. Yeah, absolutely.
And I don't think there's necessarily wrong with that. Ultimately, it's better than not exercise. Doing something regularly is very key, but also trying to push yourself in a slightly different area. Sleep. I mean, so sleep's an enormous topic, isn't it? Really, but sleep, I think, again, it can be overcomplicated, but looking at doing the simple things well, a lot of us will know what those are, but just trying to make small changes in relation to it, trying to limit your caffeine intake, certainly in the afternoon. Sleep hygiene, it's something that's thrown around quite a lot, but the benefits of it really can't be underestimated. Trying to reduce your blue light, I think limiting about your noise control and things like that in your area. Trying to sort of optimize the sleep environment, a nice cool room, and making sure that those are sort of really the only things that you're doing in your bedroom. Okay. So where are we up to? That's
we've got 4.
Is it?
Yeah.
Okay.
I'm not letting you give up now.
Off the top.
I want one more.
Number five. I would say number 5 is, when we're trying to integrate any sort of change into our life, that's what it has to be. You have to integrate it into your life. And I don't think that's where a lot of these temporary diets or exercise plans fall down, is because we're trying to just go, right, okay, let's do this, New Year's resolution, and then it will fall apart. So I think trying to take things slow, integrate them into something that works for you. If it's not something you like, ultimately you're not going to stick with it, no matter anything in the world, exercise, diet. So find out what are the sort of things that you like in amongst all the things that are on offer, and then really trying to focus on doing those regularly, and make it work for your lifestyle so that you can do it long term.
Perfect. And tip number 6, book a consultation with Dr. George. George, how can some of our listeners contact you if they wanted to have a consultation in terms of longevity?
Yeah, so my clinic is called Prosper Clinic, but I'll also be working and teaching out of Apex Academy. So if they were to book onto there, then they'll see me there on the day.
Excellent. Well, George, thank you so much for coming in today. It's been a fascinating conversation. Guys, I hope that was useful for you. If you did find it interesting, please make sure to like, share and subscribe. We want to get this information to as many people as possible. Thanks again for listening, and we'll see you next time.